Moonlight on Open Graves, Chapter 3. The Hicks pre-war 1940 Ford pickup truck was a real workhorse on the farm. With a heavy gauge steel body, it would take many years of winter's ice and summer heat to have any telling effect. The occasional dashing deer roadkill didn't leave a mark on the virgin steel. But almost 20 years of standing out braving the elements had faded the once glossy paint to a dull, flat hue. Vern remembered when his dad bought it new, how the Ford blue was smooth and shiny then. He recalled certain winters when his dad would pull him and his brother around the huge schoolyard parking lot on sleds. He'd tie a rope to the tail of the truck and then tow them around in circles, like laughing water skiers that way, faster and faster, until they couldn't withstand the centrifugal force anymore and, releasing the rope, go zinging into the snowbanks. Years of hauling feed, gravel, fieldstone, and even pulling and hauling stumps all took their relentless toll on the original metal bed. It was now replaced with a homemade bed of thick wooden planks bolted to the heavy frame. The bench seat was torn and covered with an army blanket. The dash was sun-faded and dull, and you had to have a flat-edge screwdriver to open the hood and start it. But it always started right up, and the screwdriver always went back into its place in the glove box. In this jack-leg way, everything basically worked. Everything, that is, but one solitary brake light bulb. Abby watched as the green and gold fields rolled by. The breeze felt great through the open window, and she didn't mind it blowing her light brown hair around. Vern was singing a song she didn't recognize. I'm always chasing rainbows, watching the clouds drifting by. My schemes are just like all my dreams, ending in the sky. Vern, unlike me, possessed a strong, clear singing voice. At least Abby thought so. What song is that? She asked. I think it's called I'm Always Chasing Rainbows. Pa used to love that song years ago. Ma would play the piano, and he'd play his ukulele as he sang it. That was back when they were in their 20s mostly, and he continued the song, lilting the lyrics like some lonesome-hearted lark. I'm always chasing rainbows, waiting to find a little bluebird in vain. And the truck rolled past the neighboring farm of Stan Pennell, and Abby waved out the window to Mrs. Pennell. Vern gave a little toot on the horn. The middle-aged woman was out hanging laundry, and she stood still and watched the blue Ford truck roll by with Abby waving out the window. Her arms remained motionless at her sides. 22-year-old Deputy Brad Armstrong of the Claremont Sheriff's Department, clad in starched dark blue polished black leather pistol belt and gleaming brass cartridges, saw himself essentially as a rebel without a cause. So much, in fact, that he went to the drive-in 7 times to see his idol James Dean play the misunderstood angsty rebel without a cause. He had much time on his hands alone at the speed trap along Route 38, 10 miles out of Claremont. His deputy hat was off and sat next to a True Love magazine. He adjusted his sunglasses some and messed with his hair as he practiced James Dean lines that he'd memorized from the movie. Wow, shoo gee, wow, and oh wow, I'm not going to be lonely no more, anymore, ever, ever. Damn, Dean was so cool. He felt he almost had it down if he could only work that squeaky, oily tone out of his voice. So he worked on it as he primped his hair. So what if he had red hair and Dean didn't? They fundamentally had much in common, namely the fact that both he and Dean were misunderstood, underappreciated action figures. And time dragged on in the patrol car. Wow, shoo, gee wow. Vern stopped singing and stared straight ahead as he drove. Abby broke the silence. I know you did the right thing about Jake. After a few moments, Vern replied, Yep, these things can't be helped sometimes. Anyway, I understand how much you love that dog. Heck, so did I. So did everyone. Well, except maybe Stan and Mary Pennell. They passed a parked black and white patrol car, and Vern noticed the way the cop was eyeballing him as he put his cop hat back on. Vern checked his speed and saw it was okay, 5 miles under the posted limit. In fact, unless it was going down a long hill, the old truck probably couldn't break this posted speed limit. I buried Jake under the old apple tree behind the barn. Maybe we can plant something there if you like. We'll get some flowers in town today, maybe. That sounds good. What happened to him? Abby asked. Well, like I said this morning, he got hit bad by a car or truck. That simple. I know that much, Abby said. What did it do to him? That's what I want to know. What difference does it make? Vern replied. He got hit by a car and now he's dead. That's all. Well, Abby said, technically, you are what made him dead, not the car. Whoa there, Abby. Back off. Putting Jake down was hard, real hard. Sorry, Abby replied. It makes a difference to me. I want to know, what did it do to him? Vern shot his younger sister a quick side glance. Well, okay. His leg was busted real bad. In fact, about tore clean off. I think he had busted ribs too, much bleeding internally, I suppose. I'd say he got run over by both tires, okay? He looked over at her and decided to lay it all out. A small chunk was missing out of his head too, right where one ear was about torn clean off. It was an outright miracle he managed to drag himself into the barn, but then he always was a strong-spirited dog, Vern added, with some consternation. There, you satisfied now with the details? Abby said nothing. Vern paused. A quizzical look came across his brow. Strange thing occurred after he departed this life. A wind came in right out of nowhere, into the barn, made itself into a little figure, actually about the size of you, and it just traveled and roamed about inside the barn, and then it stopped right in front of me and Jake. Of course, Jake was dead by then. Vern paused here again. A devil wind, I supposed. I've never seen one at night, though. Abby looked captivated. So he continued. Sounds crazy to say, but I'll say it anyway. It was like it had a personality or something. Sometimes I think the farm is haunted. What'd you do? Abby asked. Damn, what could I do? Just stood there and watched it. And I know this sounds nutty, but I really thought I saw a face in it too. Looking at me. Couldn't tell though, all that straw and dust winging about the place. I had to cover my eyes some. But I thought I saw a face in that dust cloud just the same, Vern said. God, Vern, are you bullshitting me? Her brother always had the wackiest stories, but Abby believed him. What? No, I ain't. And you should watch your language, sis. The patrol car was out now, accelerating towards them. The lone flashing light came on along with the long wail of the siren. Shit, what the hell do I do now? Vern braked and pulled over, and the cop car pulled in behind. But the policeman didn't get out right away. What's this guy up to? I didn't do a damn thing wrong, Vern said. And Vern looked in his mirror and saw the man casually sitting behind the wheel. A cigarette dangled from under his police hat and large military-style sunglasses. Abby stuck her head out the window and looked back. Is that Brad Armstrong? Don't do that, Abby. Abby seemed both amused and annoyed. It is Brad Armstrong. Figures. Finally, after 10 minutes, the officer got out and approached the truck on Vern's side. Through the side mirror, Vern could see that he had his hand on the butt of his revolver. Still, Vern thought he looked like a kid dressed up in his dad's policeman uniform, despite the hat, glasses, cigarette, and the revolver. He got up to the window. Vern greeted him. How you doing, Brad? How's your paw? I heard he license and registration. Vern handed him over. After a few minutes, Brad handed him back. Have you been drinking any today, Mr. Hicks? Only coffee, Brad. I mean, Marshal Armstrong or officer, deputy. Which is it? Vern was smiling. He even laughed a little. Abby laughed a lot. Deputy Brad Armstrong of the Claremont Sheriff's Department didn't laugh at all. Come on, Brad, what is this? Step out of the truck, Mr. Hicks, and place your hands on the hood. What for? What the hell did I do? Vern replied. Brad placed his hand on the pistol butt of his revolver and stepped back. Geez, okay, I'm getting out, Vern said, and Vern got out of the truck and faced the cop. Now, what'd you say for me to do? Hands on the hood, was it? Okay. Vern complied, patting one hand at a time, very gingerly down upon the really hot metal hood. There you go, Brad. How's this? Brad didn't answer, but kicked his legs out wider, one at a time. And when he kicked the right leg out to widen Vern's stance, Vern winced. As Brad shook him down, Vern could see Abby. She looked madder than a slapped hornet. At last, Brad was satisfied or disappointed that Vern carried no weapons or contraband. Mr. Hicks, I'm going to give you a sobriety test. Damn it, Brad. A sobriety test at 10 a.m. What the hell do you think I do at my farm all day long? The officer got in Vern's face, close. Why, same thing as your pa. The apple don't fall far from the tree, Vern. A farmer ought to know that. Watch it, Brad, Vern warned in a low tone. None of that old gossip is true. Brad stepped back. That's so. Mr. Hicks, I want you to walk on the white line here that way until I say stop. Then I want you to turn and face me. Brad's voice still sounded of puberty, and his obvious efforts to alter it into something more mature just made it sound all the more ludicrous. Vern, checking his temper, took a deep breath in and let it out slow. Anything you say, Brad. And he started walking down the road along the shoulder line. With each right step, his right knee gave out some and hobbled his stride. Stop. Now turn and face me. Now walk back. As Vern walked back, he saw the rage in Abby's eyes and did his best to facially communicate with her. Take it easy, girl. Easy now. Finally, he halted a few feet in front of the policeman. He said nothing. Mr. Hicks, I want you to come with me, please. Vern was then ushered into the back seat of the patrol car as Brad got into the front seat, closed the door behind him. Abby watched all this from the back window of the truck. Once inside the car, Brad began writing in his notebook, and he lit another cigarette.
I noticed you staggering, Mr. Hicks. You sure you haven't been hitting the bottle some this morning?
Vern finally lost it. Brad, if you wasn't a fuzzy, pimple-faced, red-haired schoolboy back in 45, home busy pulling the wings off of flies, you'd have seen me in the very back of the homecoming parade, Veterans Parade, in a wheelchair, with all the other local boys wounded in that damn war. You know anything about a forest along the German-Belgian border called Hurtgen? No? Well, you won't find it in that True Love magazine you're reading. In fact, a lot of our guys died there, and a lot more got shot up and lived like me. You do know that I had both my legs machine gunned there during an assault on a village called Kammerscheid. At this point, Vern paused. He realized he was probably just making things worse. Time to wrap it up and shut up. No, Brad? Don't know nothing about that either? Well, you just go ahead and write down that I was staggering drunk today at 10 a.m. if you want. Shit. That's all I got to say. Brad stopped writing in his notebook and looked at Vern from the safety he found behind his sunglasses and the rearview mirror in the patrol car. However, Vern's steel gaze penetrated both mediums with ease. Brad felt uncomfortable and tried to restore his bullshit authority.
You don't say, Mr. Hicks. That a fact. Now let me get this down. You say you were staggering because you were in a hurtin' kind of forest? I'm a tad bit confused.
Vern turned his head and just stared out the window, smiling, as if he were looking at two butterflies mating on a daisy.
Wait here, Vern. Mr. Hicks, I mean.
Vern then got out and began looking at the back of the truck. Next, he peered in through the driver's side at Abby. He removed his hat and sunglasses and leaned in some through the window. Why, hello, Abby. Wow, Shuji, wow, you're looking nice. He was really pleased with that Dean impression. It had a nice resonance projecting into the cab of the truck. Sorry I had to do this to your brother. Just doing my job, you know what I mean? Abby said nothing as she stared out her window across the open fields and rolling hills. Brad took the opportunity to inventory her figure from the legs up. Her cotton summer dress accentuating all the carnal, God-given assets. Her tight curves, plump, perky breast, subtle white skin, and flowing brown hair had a devilishly intoxicating influence on Brad Armstrong. Then, in his natural, impish tone, Brad murmured, Say, Abby, you wearing a bra these days? The words came out thick and blubbery, and he anxiously awaited for her response. Abby turned and smiled a full-powered, sensual smile, and the eyes did their work as well. Their eyes locked. Brad suddenly felt himself caving in from the skull down. His jaw dropped open, and he almost drooled as she continued to lay her charms on, full power, no mercy. The heat from the road felt hotter as the Earth's gravitational forces seemed to multiply under Brad's black leather shoes. His feet were starting to feel like steaks on a grill. Abby kept it up. Well, not today, Brad. No, I'm not wearing a bra. And she slowly inhaled, filling out her chest cavity. Brad thought he could smell perfume. Then, referring to a well-circulated story from her Claremont high school years, Abby said, Say, Brad, you still packing your sister's panties in your underwear these days? Wow, Shuji, wow, wow.
Brad's face flushed so hard Abby thought his blackheads would pop out. His jaw tightened, and she stepped back from the truck and slowly put his sunglasses and hat back on. Then Brad leaned in the truck again and pulled his sunglasses down so she could see his angry eyes. "You can bet your sweet ass that I'll be seeing you around, Abby." With that, he walked back to the patrol car and got in. "Mr. Hicks, I'm taking into account your war service and all and dropping your drunk driving charges." Vern was quiet, detached even. "However, I'm citing you for an unserviceable brake light." Vern faced him in the mirror. He didn't look in the least way ruffled. "Okay, Brad." "There's one other issue, Mr. Hicks. Your dog was in the road yesterday obstructing traffic. I almost got into an accident because of your dog." Vern's eyes lit up like fire, and his nostrils flared some. He glared at Brad in the rearview mirror. Then, like a gentle wave washing over the beach, he cooled. Brad continued his policeman citation bit. "You're damn lucky I don't cite you for that as well. Understand?" "Okay, Brad." Brad got out and let Vern out of the back. He walked behind Vern to the truck. When they reached the driver's door, Brad put his hand on the door handle and halted Vern. "You best get that light fixed soon and keep your animals out of the road, you hear me?" "Sure, Brad." Brad unlatched the door and stepped back. He said, "I ain't going yet, Brad. I've got to open the hood to start her." Brad handed him a ticket before speeding off in his patrol car, spinning his wheels as he left the scene. Vern leaned in and unlatched the glove box, grabbing the screwdriver and tossing in the ticket. Abby, who was looking out her side window, finally turned an angry, tear-streaked face to Vern. Vern regarded her, and he said, "Are you all right? What'd he say to you while I was sitting in his patrol car? I want to know." "Oh," Abby said, "that Brad always was a complete creep in high school, and he probably always will be." "Oh yeah, probably," Vern replied. "Why can't that asshole ever do the right thing?" Abby said. "Now, Abby," Vern replied, "check your anger, girl." And he added in a mock royalty voice, "Courtesy and composure are the Queen's jewels." Then he disappeared under the hood. Abby sighed and wiped her face of angry, undried tears. The sun felt warm on her lap, and a breeze came in. Her brother was a good man, too good for Claremont sometimes. She always felt deeply honored to be associated to him by blood, though the town seemed to regard him as beneath their artificially inflated honors. Vern got in the old truck. He got it started again and got in the old truck, and the two headed off to town again. They were quiet for a while, taking in the passing landscape while their thoughts mellowed and developed. When he felt that his thoughts on the recent events with Brad had reached maturity, he let them out to roam about any open mind that would receive them. He got philosophical, saying there will always be Brad Armstrongs in the world. He's just like his father, Todd Armstrong. Scared men, basically. Scared of life. Scared of love. Scared of death. Shit, scared of themselves. No sense getting mad or hating any of them, though. They're our brothers, too, just weaker than you or I, Abby. They need our help, and perhaps we have a responsibility to help them. I don't know." Abby sighed. She'd heard Vern's Zen love speech before.
A minute later, Vern continued his blab spiel. Trick is knowing just how to help him without getting yourself hurt, bit. Make no mistake about it, a scared creature like Brad Armstrong will turn on you and bite like a trapped coon if you're not careful. It's said somewhere in the Bible that perfect love casts out all fear. I believe that's true. Perfect love does cast out all fear. And I'll take this a step farther. Fear is the root of most hate in this world. So there you have it, the golden key to harmony. The armory of harmony. The golden key to the armory of harmony. What do you think of that? Good one, huh? Abby was detached. She was half tuned out. Vern stared out as he drove down the road. Far out. Stared far out. The truck's old motor sounded strong, and the day was beautiful. He was in the groove now, rolling with it. Then, in a low, hollow-sounding voice to himself, yes, I do believe that's true. Abby sneaked a glance over at him. It occurred to her that he had just healed himself right then and there of any injury Brad Armstrong had dealt him. He continued now in a firm voice. Love is a force, and a powerful one too, of uncommon qualities. Uncommon because love's the only thing I know of that gives and only creates. It never takes and never destroys. Not even hate. Love merely displaces hate or replaces it. I'm not sure which one. But I do know that hate would destroy all love if allowed to, and sometimes it is allowed to. I've seen that before. Abby sat quietly, a captive audience. She knew well how Vern could ride the groove, as she called his creative thought processes, for all it was worth. Abby was amused, enlightened, and, if truth be had, bored. Abby was well able to facilitate many emotions simultaneously. Vern went on. Now hate, with all its tentacles, painful and diseased limbs, such as fear and anger. Hate is also an uncommon force. Hate only consumes, like a fire, but given no light or warmth. The blackest, coldest fire, blackest void against life. Against love, it actually fears the light and warmth of love, but trapped within the boundaries of its own nature, hate can only express itself in rage, fear, and destruction. But if love can get in, hate runs, or dies, or maybe gets transformed, like I said. I don't know which yet. Okay, I'm played out on this. Vern was out of the groove now. The groove ride being over, as always, ended in a new question. A few minutes later, Vern attempted a dialogue of a different sort. Say, what'd that Deputy Brad say to you when I was locked in the back of that patrol car? Already, the cold darkness he referred to was assaulting him, launching a counterattack after being driven out by the love principle. The war never ceases. Hey, Vern said, I want to know what that jerk say to you. Huh? Oh. Abby was sleeping. Vern smiled. All at once it occurred to Vern that he hadn't touched the brake pedal at all when he passed Brad's parked car. The only time Brad could have noticed the brake light out was after he had pulled him over. So there it was. Brad was bent on nothing more than harassment. Sounded like he had even killed Jake, by accident perhaps, if Jake was out in the road. Either way, Brad certainly felt no remorse over it. As if the world weren't a hard enough place with death and taxes and all, and people got to go and make it even harder on each other. When they reached the village of Claremont and bumped over the railroad tracks, Abby awoke, slowly. Vern noticed that she drooled on herself some as she slept. Well, hello, sis. Better clean that drool off your face and blouse, girl, before we get to Haley's. And he pointed the rear view mirror at her. First stop was Claremont Savings Bank, where Hicks cashed his government check. Next stop was Haley's department store. Here's $20, Abby. Go in and see if you can blow it. Abby smiled. She was wide awake now. No problem, she said. Thanks. I got to go to McDermott's for a few sacks of feed and a roll of chicken wire. I'll see you back here in half an hour. Oh, and I got to go and try and find a brake light bulb for this old heap as well. Vern remembered that he needed to make a discreet stop at the local liquor store. Make that 45 minutes, he said. I'll meet you at Munchie's place. Abby was an attractive young woman. Some of the male population held her as perhaps the prettiest in Claremont that particular year. She was used to all the varied approaches the Claremont men, both young and old, employed around her. She reckoned it would have shocked Vern right out of his suspenders if he knew just how adept she was at handling men. While not coming off as either haughty or snobbish, she rarely gave an inch to any of their advances. Rarely, that is, for she was not what you'd call a frigid girl either. Mr. Sinclair, her high school math teacher, headed off first in the shoe department. He was sporting a waxed and curvy French-style mustache and had recently taken to flapping a portion of his dyed hair over the expanding bald spot on the top of his head. But Sinclair, as dashing as he wasn't, was still in the land of the living, having not yet crossed over to the fields of virile apathy. His eyes took on the twinkle of the big bad wolf with the Red Riding Hood. Hello, Abby. My, you're looking good. Where are you keeping yourself these days? He said. Well, hello, Mr. Sinclair, and thank you. I'm at the University of Louisville these days studying horticulture. I'm home at the farm for the summer. So how's your daughter Penny these days? We're in the same classes all the time. She have that baby yet? She hated doing this to the man. But a pound of prudence supplied yields 10 pounds of horse hockey denied. That disarmed Mr. Sinclair and halted his subliminal advance. Yes, she did. A 7-pound girl. Thank you. All the best to your studies at Louisville. And he departed. Next, pimple-faced Ralph Green shyly said, hello, in the candy section. And that's all he could muster after she smiled and said hello back. She asked him how his school was going, and he blushed and his eyes turned to the floor, glancing off her cleavage on the way down. Like Brad the cad earlier, he thought he smelled her perfume and got a little overpowered by hormones and imagination. He turned to leave and mumbled out what sounded like, thank you, Abby. Goodbye, Abby. God, I can't believe that I said that. Actually, instead of perfume radiating off her cleavage, what Brad smelled was a row of Necco wafer candies next to him. Abby liked Ralph and thought he was a dandy in ways. She was confident he would grow out of his crippling shyness someday and be a prize catch for some lucky girl. But if he didn't get over his shyness, the she-wolves of Claremont would catch him instead and rip his tender virginal soul right out and together as a pack and tear it about to bloody, unrecognizable shreds. She envisioned this, then prayed a little prayer for him, then and there. Next, in the magazine area, Johnny Banks and Petey Willis employed a different sort of tactic. They stalked her, getting closer and closer, until Johnny spoke out within earshot of her. Oh man, Petey, that ass can grease my scooter anytime. Petey laughed so hard he farted loudly, and Johnny punched him in the arm. Abby wasn't amused at all. "Get lost, Johnny," surprisingly. And surprisingly, he left. Not all guys were creeps with one-way agendas, though. And she enjoyed a chat with Tim Dobson, who always delighted her with his simple, honest charm and wit. And after her shopping was done, she took Roy Patterson up on his request to join her for an ice cream float across the street at Munchie's place. They visited there, seated in the front window, while she waited and watched for Vern's truck. Though she'd never have let it on to him or anyone else for that matter, she found Roy to be a bit of a bore, going on and on about his baseball accolades. He didn't even seem to hear her, so she stopped talking and only smiled mostly. "Oh, really?" and "Wow." Her real thoughts were more like, "Where the hell is my brother?" To make matters worse, Patterson's breath smelled like donkey dung. Unknown to her, for her part and her small-town glory, Abby had a small but visible snot in her left nostril, and Roy noticed that, and he did a commendable job hiding that little fact from her, even though it nauseated him some. Nobody's flawless, not even Abby Hicks. When Vern pulled up to Haley's 30 minutes later, pulled up to Munchie's 30 minutes later, she slurped down the last of the float and bid Roy goodbye and left. Naturally, Roy watched her intently as she crossed the street. Snot or not, Roy kicked himself for not making a date in all his ramblings of sports. The back of the Ford was laden with sacks of feed and a huge roll of chicken wire. "Hey, I see you had no trouble at all shopping," Vern said. "What'd you get?" "Well," Abby replied, "among other things, I got this dress." And she took it out and unfurled a slanky cotton outfit in emerald with cream trim. "And Ricky's going to love it." "Hey, that's nice. When are you going to see him again? He done with college yet?" "Yes," Abby said, "and I've been meaning to talk to you about something. Ricky wrote me and wants to come stay the night tomorrow and then take me Monday to his parents for a week or so. Just letting you know." Vern was quiet for a few moments before answering. He said, "Okay, I look forward to seeing him again." Then he added, "You want to stop at Darlene's Diner and get something to eat? I'm starved myself, and I'm buying." "Sure," Abby answered. Darlene ran Darlene's Diner. She was a tall, blonde widow of 33 and a single mother of one errant boy named Byron, who was more widely known as Pork Chop. When Vern and Abby strolled into the diner, Darlene zeroed in on the two and ushered them to a booth. Small talk and smiles came with the menus. Later, as their lunches were being leisurely consumed, Abby's woman's intuition easily picked up on the plain fact that widow Darlene had a tremendous crush on her brother. Her suspicions were fueled when she noticed how Darlene neglected 3 customers completely to come over and chat with Vern. Yet for all he was worth, Vern didn't even seem to notice. Instead, he gave his undivided attention to his Reuben sandwich, then the dill pickles, next the mountain of French fries was attacked, and finally the milk and coffee were finished off. Then he leaned back and released a huge guttural "ah." Abby found the sheer contentment in his "ah" particularly amusing. It was his way of politely signaling a close to Darlene's small talk. "That was great, Darlene. And I have to say, I like what you did with your sign out front. Nice touch." He didn't even notice that she had let her hair down this time when she came over. Abby noticed, though. She noticed almost all these sorts of things, as it was all very amusing and interesting, quietly studying people. Neither of them noticed the uplifting work of her new Playtex Magic Controller bra. They weren't looking. Two of the new customers noticed, though. "Bye, Darlene," Vern said, and slapped a $5 down on the counter. "Let's go, Abby. Keep the change, Darlene." Back at the farm, as they pulled into their driveway, Abby was the first to discover what neither of them noticed earlier. She spoke up. "Look how the ground's tore up over there. Somebody drove right through our front yard." Vern said nothing but noted it as the pickup bounced into the long dirt driveway that led up to the barnyard and farmhouse. Later that evening, Vern went down to where the tire tracks were. "Sure enough," he said out loud as he noted the way the tracks cut a reckless path from the road to the yard and back onto the road again. On closer inspection, he found a bloody spot in the grass, the same place where Jake usually stretched out an easy 10 to 15 feet from the road surface. He pictured Brad Armstrong swerving off the road and into their lawn, hitting Jake. His temper hardened. He prayed over the matter, and he prayed for the grace to forgive Brad. It was just not his way to hate, but rather it was the way. Just the same, the matter greatly weighed upon his mind from that moment on. What was going on? Why was Sheriff Brad Armstrong so bent on harassing him?